Caregiving Club on Air. This podcast is dedicated to the millions of family caregivers who want wellness tips and self-care solutions, who seek expert advice, and who want news about healthy aging and how to create well home design in our forever homes. I'm Sherri Snelling, a corporate gerontologist, author, and educator, a TV interviewer, host, and news commentator. I'm joining you from Southern California, where our interviews and news take us all across the country to explore the many ways to help you on your caregiving journey and to lift you up here at Caregiving Club on Air. Welcome to Caregiving Club on Air. I'm your host, Sherri Snelling, and boy, have we got a great April episode for you. We're going to put the spotlight on artificial intelligence, or as most of us know it, AI and aging. And we've got two of the best experts on our episode today. We have Lawrence Kosick, who is co-founder of Get Set Up, which is a great learning platform for older adults, but he's going to tell us how they're instituting new AI tools that are going to help really personalize and help make things faster and easier to find that we need in terms of things we need to know about our own health and lots of other topics. And then we also have DOR SKULER, who is the co-founder and CEO of Intuition Robotics. And they're the makers of a care bot, and you may have heard of her, called ElliQ. And Dora is going to tell us a little bit more about how they have been implementing AI to more personalized health data for older adults, and also their caregiver app that they launched. So those are going to be two fantastic interviews. And then in our Caregiver Wellness news, we're going to talk a little bit about April, National Stress Awareness Month, and something you may have seen on TikTok because it is trending right now, and it's called cortisol face. What is it? Do you have it? And are caregivers more at risk for cortisol face? We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how the Cleveland Clinic has instituted a great sensor wearable for employees to test their own stress levels and become a little bit more knowledgeable about when cortisol is released at levels that we know can be dangerous to our health. That's a really interesting kind of best practice. And then we're going to turn to caregiver training. Trulta, which is a caregiver training platform, just put out a new report talking about what caregivers really need in terms of helping them care for their loved ones at home. And then Welcome Design News, we're also going to put a spotlight on April National Parkinson's Awareness Month. And you may have heard of this, but there's been some research done on things called Parkinson's clusters. And this is really, I think, highlighting for us that when it comes to our health, it's not just about genetics or lifestyle choices. It's also about our environments, where we live, our neighborhoods, our homes, where we work, our offices. We're going to talk about why some pockets of the United States has higher prevalence of Parkinson's risk. And then we're also going to share some of the inside information from the National Alliance for Caregiving, our friends there who did research with the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research on caregivers of those with Parkinson's disease. Actually, the first time ever that that population of caregivers have been queried, and we've taken a deep dive on what their needs are. So we've got a really great jam-packed episode for you, but let's go ahead and dive right into our Caregiver Wellness news. So I'm going to start our Caregiver Wellness news with what I would call a cautionary tale for not just family caregivers, but for all of us out there who might be getting our health and medical information off of TikTok. Don't do it. And here's why. There's actually something that has been trending, and it caught my eye on TikTok. I came across some news stories on this, and it's called cortisol face. Basically, what it relates to is, many of us know, when we have high stress levels, we release cortisol at higher levels than normal, and this could cause things like inflammation and then lead to a cascade of other health issues down the road, chronic illnesses, everything from cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure and diabetes and obesity and even Alzheimer's disease. So cortisol is not a bad hormone. It helps regulate our system, and it's usually higher in the morning and lower in the afternoons. So you want to make sure that it stays at the proper levels. And one of the ways to get proper level of cortisol is certainly getting good restorative sleep and keeping up your sleep routines at the same time, rising at the same time and going to bed at the same time. Those are great ways to kind of keep that cortisol intact. And also finding ways to minimize stress when you feel it so that you can bring your body back into balance and reach what we call, as gerontologists, called homeostasis. So what does cortisol face? Well, what the influencers, the medical experts on TikTok are telling us, and I say that facetiously, is that if your cheeks are really puffy, you might have cortisol face, and you shouldn't feel bad about it, and you shouldn't feel that you don't look good. It's something that comes and goes, and they are just trying to give an explanation for it, and also tie it to, which does make some sense, stress. However, the medical professionals, and I actually did reach out to a couple of friends of mine who are wonderful scientists, clinicians, physicians at academic medical center that I used to work at here in Southern California, have said there is no such thing. There is no medical term called cortisol face. And in fact, any kind of bloating or puffy cheeks is going to be more related to maybe an allergic reaction, or something else that may be going on. And certainly if you are struggling with breathing, or having any issues with swallowing, you should go to the emergency room. But certainly if you have this kind of puffier face, you may tried to weight gain, certainly, but it's something you may want to talk to your doctor about. But it is not a medical condition that can be treated or whatever. But what was interesting about it to me is, first of all, as I said, cautionary tale, please, please, please do not get your medical and health information off of things like TikTok with people who have no background at all in medical or health. But also, what are the things that can help us when maybe we feel like we are under a lot of stress? We're releasing that cascade of cortisol in our system. So I came across something else in my research, which I thought was really interesting. And this was that the Cleveland Clinic is actually providing an app and a wearable sensor patch for its employees to monitor their own cortisol levels. And the way that you do this is it measures the cortisol in your saliva. And so what they show you is, okay, if you're at a significantly higher level later in the afternoon when your cortisol should be lower, that might be something you want to think about. Are you feeling stressed? Maybe you need to do some breathing exercises or things like that. But it's using artificial intelligence to personalize your information and put the power back into your own hands on what's happening with your health and give you more data and information to talk to your physician about. So this cortisol patch, which is really interesting, or wearable, I should call it, is produced by a company called Nutrix, which I think is a Swiss company, and it's called CortiSense. It actually just won the CES Innovation Award this year in January for the digital health category. And then it also has other types of monitoring that it can do, such as AI-powered dietary management and other things for employees. And, when we look at, I do a lot of work, of course, as many of you know, with employers. And so workplace stress costs U.S. businesses over $300 billion annually in the health effects to its employees. And more than 1 billion employees are absent every day due to stress-related health issues. That's huge. I was surprised by that number, but that's what's happening out there. So, again, understanding what cortisol is, it's not completely bad. As I said, everybody thinks it's the bad hormone. No, it's only bad when it's out of whack, when it's dysfunctioning, when you've got way too much of it in your system that is brought on by stress that we're not managing well, and we're just allowing that chronic stress to build up. And also ultimately, because April is also National Stress Awareness Month, as we said, that can lead to things like caregiver burnout. And by the way, I just put up a video on our Self-Care in 7 Minutes series on our YouTube channel that is all about what is burnout, what are the signs of burnout, and then 7 little 7-minute hacks that you can do, particularly for family caregivers, You have no time to beat that burnout and help, again, reduce that overload of cortisol and stress in your system. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I thought those two stories were kind of related and kind of interesting. The other thing is that when we are going to move into our two interviews, by the way, so grateful to Lawrence Kosick of Get Up and DOR SKULER of Intuition Robotics for being on this episode, because they're doing so much now in this area of artificial intelligence and aging and older adults and family caregivers. But I mentioned to both of them, and there was a CNN report that came out a few months ago that said that older adults are a little cagey still, a little wary maybe of the artificial intelligence. Like if you're marketing a product or service with artificial intelligence, older adults may be like, I'm not so sure. And I think it's really, about the two P's, right? So the first P is personalization. That's the good benefit. You can really pinpoint your health data, your specific changes that are happening and things that you need, and it can then become intelligent about those needs and give you better information. That's the good side of AI. The downside, I think, particularly for older adults and maybe many family caregivers, is the privacy issue, right? We're very concerned. Where does the data go? How's it being used? What does it say about me? All that kind of stuff. And that's just the AI that's used in health. I mean, obviously, we've got ChatGPT and other things happening in artificial intelligence because it's everywhere now. We have to learn to live with AI and be happy with it, be friends with it. But I think that's the other side of it, is more the privacy side of it. Now, there was a recent report that also came out from United Church Homes and MIT AgeLab. And they just did some research on how family caregivers feel about AI in both their own health, but also the long-term care of their older loved ones. Very interesting research, actually. It was called the Caregiver Technology Survey. And by the way, we're going to have links to all this stuff that I talk about on our episode guide page, as we always do. So you can find this survey there. But they found that 88% of caregivers trust AI and are okay giving them some information about their older loved one. However, only 3% of family caregivers said they'd give all of the information, or that they want every single thing of their loved one's day, what they say, what's happening with them, to actually be delivered to AI, to technology. So I thought that was a little interesting. It's like, okay, so the majority are okay with some, but maybe not all. What obviously the survey couldn't drill down on is, okay, well, what kind of information do you not want shared? And I think that's where all the products and services are going to have to take a look at this. They also found that almost half, about 47%, are currently using AI with a wearable or a remote monitoring system for their loved one. Okay, so they've fully embraced, or not fully, I should say, 50% have embraced it. 42% are using digital assistants, and that's things like Alexa, right? Or Google Home or whatever, or things like smart speakers and voice first type products and technology that you can get. And then 1/3 are using it for smart home. So this is everything from turning on and off the lights easily, safety, like a Simply Safe or a Ring doorbell or Nest or whatever, and also for fall detection, or at least alerts to falls. And about 1/3, as I said, are using AI for that. So they certainly have, dip their toe into the AI world and find there are some definite benefits when caring for their loved one. Now, we're going to turn to our interviews with Lawrence and DOR. As I said, I'm so grateful to have them on. And I think that they are going to kind of back up what I've always felt, and that is that caregiving is always going to be what we call high touch, which is human, and high tech, which is supplemented by technology. We know that we're going to have more and more older adults that we have to care for. We have actually, with this growing number of older adults, we don't have as many family caregivers around to care for our older adults. So we're going to have to think about technology in certain ways. Senior living's already implementing a lot of things in terms of, how they can help manage, because they also deal with things like staffing shortages inside their communities. Those of us who are caring for loved ones at home know, we don't want our loved ones to fall and be lying on the floor, for 4 hours or whatever, and other things, right? So it's always going to be that blend. But I think the big thing to know is that AI is not going to replace a human person. It's going to supplement. And actually, if it's done well and if it's done right, it's going to help make a caregiver's life not easier, because again, I don't think that caregivers are looking for necessarily like, I want my life to be easier. I mean, certainly we don't want the stress and the burnout that we talked about earlier, but I want to be a better caregiver. So give me the data I need to care in a better way for my loved one. Help find solutions that I haven't thought about or I don't even know about. Give me that kind of information. That is what I think we're looking for as family caregivers. We're not looking to be replaced. We can go have a pedicure or play pickleball. Although those are all good things, self-care if you can find the time. But let's face it, how many caregivers really can find the time to do that? Not many. And also there's a silver lining to caregiving. We've talked about that before. A lot of caregivers, even though, you're tired, maybe losing sleep, not doing as many things as you used to do, but there is something that is really wonderful about caring for our older loved ones and giving back to those who have given us so much. So we don't necessarily want to be replaced or take a whole lot of time off. Maybe we need breaks because we have to keep going, keep our energy and level up. But anything AI can do to make us better caregiver, I think, is what we're looking for. So with that, I am going to, and I just wanted to say the other thing I talked to Lawrence and Dora about is I think the key on embracing AI is that the company you're dealing with, whether it's a platform like Get Set Up or whether it's an actual product like ElliQ from Intuition Robotics, you have to trust that company. There has to be a trust between the customer and the company that is delivering you the information. That's going to be key moving forward in all of this AI and other advanced technology. There just has to be that trust factor. And I think both Lawrence and Dor expressed that with the services that they're doing, and I trust them. So with that, we're going to have back-to-back interviews. We're going to start with Lawrence Kosick, as I said, who is the co-founder, CEO of Get Set Up, which is a wonderful learning platform. It's also kind of a social area for adults over the age of 50. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the platform in general, but then he's going to tell us about all the ways that AI are really improving what they can deliver for older adults and also help out family caregivers. And then we're going to go right into the interview with DOR SKULER, as I said, who is the co-founder and CEO of Intuition Robotics, who are the makers of an adorable little care bot called ElliQ. You're going to learn about how ElliQ is using AI to, again, give better information to older adults and family caregivers, and also the new caregiver app that Intuition Robotics just recently had announced. So here are my interviews, first Lawrence and then Dor. So I'm super excited to do this next interview with our guest, Lawrence Kosick, who is the CEO and founder of Get Set Up. And Lawrence has the special honor of being only our second guest to be an encore interview for this podcast. So Lawrence, welcome back to Caregiving Club on Air.
Sherri, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for including me today.
Well, we always enjoy your wonderful insights, and you've got a lot of exciting stuff to share. I know that AI is a big topic, and that's what we're going to delve into today. But just as a quick refresher, first of all, tell us again where we're talking to you from, and then give us again that kind of quick overview of what Get Set Up is.
Sounds great. I would love to. So I'm currently in Palm Desert, California. I spend most of my time though in the Bay Area. However, not today. But Get Set Up is a fully virtual company. So we have folks that are located all over the place, which means I travel quite a lot to see the team and to see the learners.
Yeah, we love the Palm Desert area. We got a lot of listeners, I know, in that particular corner of California. So that's great. So tell us again, Get Set Up was really dedicated to supporting adults over age 50 with this passion for lifelong learning. Tell us quickly again what the platform's all about.
Sure thing. So we started Get Set Up almost 5 years ago, just slightly before the pandemic, because we thought that there was a big both problem and opportunity to address. And we thought, there's no real safe, secure place for older adults to learn new things, socialize, and connect with others. There was a platform for every other age group and demographic, but why nothing for older adults? And so myself and my co-founder, Neil, both of us who had older parents, and also older friends, family, and loved ones for whom we were sort of substandard tech support, thought, well, why don't we create this place? And I think the most important decision we made was who's going to teach the classes? Who's going to teach the things that older adults need to learn to live happy, healthy, more productive lives? And instead of having it be sort of younger folks and millennials and whatnot, we thought, well, why not use older adults themselves, retired doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, yoga instructors, like folks just like us who have some credentials and some expertise, have them teach others just like them, all the things that they might either want to need or want to learn or need to learn to live at home independently longer. So Get Set Up became this virtual platform where older adults could learn from others just like them. And as we fast forward to today, we're excited about the folks who spend their hours and their days learning important things for us, whether that be technical skills, health and wellness, how to manage chronic illness, workforce development skills if they want or need to continue working. Get Set Up has become that place.
Well, and what I love too is, and we talked about this on your first podcast interview we did with you, is that it certainly is a learning center, but it's also a social center. I mean, a lot of the folks that join your classes, they kind of wind up staying connected and, interacting with each other, which is so great to have for older adults who are looking for kind of that special tribe of people who love bird watching or whatever it happens to be. And also, I just want to do a shout out, congratulations. I saw on LinkedIn yesterday that you hit 1 million classes taken, I think it was, in the New York area. So congrats.
Thank you. Yes, that was a fun milestone to hit. And really, we're excited that what we build and what we offer gets used and it can help so many people, because that's what gets us out of bed every day is, how do we create content and programming that helps older adults do what it is they want and need to do?
Well, now we've got some new exciting news from you, because as we know, this artificial intelligence, AI, is kind of taking over the world. It's everywhere. It is the revolution. We're all part of it. We're not turning back from all of this. But just broadly, can you just tell us your perspective on how AI is kind of benefiting older adults? And then we want to launch into your latest announcement about what you're doing with AI. But just in general, how do you see AI playing out in the support of older adults over the next few years?
Well, that's a wonderful question. So I can tell you, Sherri, probably over the course of the last year, we've all been reading about AI and how it's going to change the world and how it's going to change our lives and how it's going to change business. And we thought a lot about, well, how is that going to impact older adults? And the first thing that we wanted to do was create a lot of programming and courses around, what is it? How to use it safely. And I think initially there was a lot of commentary around, how it's being used to scam people. And that's true. We do need to be very vigilant in making sure that older adults understand, how to identify these things and how to use it to make sure that it's safe. As with any technology, with the advent of the internet, there was all sorts of different ways that could be misused and we could be scammed. AI will be no different. There'll be both problems and opportunities. And I think we took the early stance. Let's just start educating people on what it is, what it can do, and how to use it safely. And so, from that perspective, you think we're a learning platform. So first we start by teaching people, what it is and how to use it safely. But then it opens up a whole new world of sort of interesting opportunities. And at a high level, we think the interesting opportunity is this. Older adults, well, I think all of us, we struggle with, complicated apps and websites and programs and services that can be sort of buried, beneath hard to use websites and double authentication when we're trying to get into, certain apps and access certain information, whether that be government programs or healthcare programs or finance, whatnot. What AI does or can do, if trained and used properly, is it can be a really wonderful sort of service layer that can go and get things, go and get information, retrieve it, and bring it back and organize it in a convenient manner. And if you think about sort of the things that many of our learners struggle with, is there's so much wonderful information, wonderful products and services for which they could they could use, they could be eligible for. If only they could get to them, they could find them. There was an easy way to learn about them. I think AI actually represents a pretty interesting way to sort of bridge that gap and to help bring more organized information that's relevant to our older adults in a better, faster, easier to access way. And so that's what I think we believe the opportunity is. And it doesn't replace what we do. I think it augments what we do. We're always going to be sort of this peer-to-peer live and interactive platform. But how could we use AI to sort of expand what it is we do and do, more of it better?
So that's what I want to dig into. You're introducing Helen, who is, if I understand correctly, an AI assistant. So this seems like it's kind of a supplementary service or a new component of Get Set Up. It's not so much taking a class, but it's having Helen help navigate you through the very complicated, complex healthcare world and all kinds of things that, help caregivers also take care of their older loved ones. But tell us more about Helen.
So the way we came up with the idea for Helen is we started to look at almost 5 years of learning data. So we've been having older adults teach older adults, all the important products, services, government programs, healthcare benefits, et cetera, for 5 years. And when we looked at the data, we thought this would be wonderful to train an assistant that could sort of augment and complement sort of our classes. And the way it does this is since we have 5 years of data, we actually understand the optimal sort of vocabulary for teaching older adults, products and services, the empathy required, the most common use cases, sort of the learning pathways and the challenges. And we thought, well, why don't we use that information to create a nice AI assistant that can help folks, and limited use cases, help them, find a class, get notes for their class, get recommendations for the next class. And it's still early days, but we're seeing our learners start to use it for additional research and additional questions and finding some help that may not be on Get Set Up, but Get Set Up helps sort of guide them to that place. And so because we've been able to train Helen to be sort of very older adult centric with the right vocabulary, empathy, etc., it makes it rather unique and sort of purpose built to sort of help our older adults learn what it is they either want or need to learn or to find, either on us or in that sort of other place. And so it's been a wonderful experiment. It's still early days, but we're seeing sort of wonderful use cases where Helen's being used.
Well, I think that, the promise of AI is that personalization, which I think we're all looking for. It's great to have all this information, but if it doesn't really pertain to me or my loved one, it's just kind of useless data. And that's where AI kind of comes in. So let me just throw out an example and see if I'm right on this. Let's just say you're taking a class on the costs of care for your older loved one as a family caregiver. Would Helen then be able to know that my dad is a veteran and then, guide me to maybe the veterans benefits I can tap into for him or how I might be able to get paid for being his caregiver? Is that the kind of detail that you would be providing?
So conceivably, yes, but I'll back up and I'll start one level higher. So the first thing Helen could do is when a learner arrives at Get Set Up, we can find out, are they a caregiver? Are they the older adult loved one? And what they're interested in. How can we help them find what it is they're looking for? So if it was a caregiver looking for more caregiver information, we could guide them to either classes or articles on that relevant topic. And so Helen is being trained to sort of ask and understand the context to make those recommendations around what either the caregiver or the older adult loved one might be looking for, and then guide them there. Now, I think we want to be careful to sort of, never ask for personal health information, be very limited on sort of the personally identifiable information. For phase one, we just want to help people find what it is they're looking for and get them to that class or that information. Now, you're right, because this AI starts to get truly powerful when it can really be, almost a concierge for you. But in that case, it needs to know a little bit more about you in order to do that. And that's where it will go over time, because once we're able to sort of recommend classes and information that are most useful, people will start to trust and feel comfortable with using Helen for that next project or that next thing. And that could be anything from recommend a healthy recipe, give me the specifics of that recipe, help me with a travel plan to Florence, Italy, but I'm traveling alone and I have some mobility challenges. So recommend restaurants that are on the first floor that have no stairs. Like, those are the kind of things that it can do. It's really quite fun and interesting. But I think that there's a place to start, and the place to start is help somebody find the class, the information, the answer to their first question, and then open up that door of opportunity. Oh, this is safe. This is interesting. This is relevant to me. This is helpful. What else can I do with this?
Yeah, and you bring up something that's very interesting. You use the travel example because I was actually just at a big conference that was a lot of home care franchisees and agencies across the country, and I was doing a presentation, and I think the dilemma for family caregivers and even professionals in the industry is sometimes we don't know what we don't know, that's out there, and there's a lot of great innovation going on. And I had asked a question about how many of them had heard of these virtual travel agencies. So that would be for adults who really physically can't travel anymore. And nobody raised their hand. And that to me is like, how do we bridge that gap? Is that something that you see that Helen then might be able to do for people? Is like say, hey, there's also this option if your loved one doesn't want to physically travel anymore.
Yeah, I think the goal. I mean, AI learns from data. And so, whether that's observational or things that we tell her, it just continues to sort of evolve over time. And again, we've taken a very conservative approach where we want people to sort of safely find things that they want to learn, through either classes or articles. But we're very quickly seeing, much in the same way that people use Google, we have questions about everything. But Google simply, unless you're using their AI product, basic Google that we've been using for years goes and finds existing information based on the keywords that you put in, and it brings it back. But there's some interesting contextualization that we're now talking about, which is I want to travel to Italy, for example. Okay, so recommend restaurants to me. Okay, well, what kind of restaurants should I recommend? Are there any considerations around access, mobility, expense? So you can ask Helen things like, I'm going to Florence, Italy for 1 week. I'm traveling by myself. I do like restaurants that are located on the first floor. I'm a vegan and I have a moderate budget. And it does a pretty good job. It'll get better over time. She'll get better over time, but she does a pretty nice job of that, better than any other place that I can find to get that information. So it's been wonderful to really test and sort of see where this can go. But it can absolutely, I say it, she, we could have given it a man's name, a woman's name. We can have more than one Helen, right?
That's right.
Yeah, she is proving to be really quite fun and quite helpful to discover things that we didn't know that we could get through a search query because of the additional context that AI can layer on, right? So it's not just retrieving current information, but it's taking the current information that it finds, and then it's saying, okay, we believe that Sherri's also asking for this information because she's taking a trip and she's told us she's going by herself. So how do we put this into a format that's helpful so she can use it to take her next best action? And it's that extra layer of intelligence that makes artificial AI different than just a basic Google search.
Yeah. And again, to your point, it's personalized to the individual. So, okay. So, is this something where I would go on to the Get Set Up platform and there'd be something I'd push or somewhere I'd go to talk to Helen? And then does Helen talk to me like Siri? Or you said it's not really a chatbot? Because I know some people are familiar now with going to sites and they can have these chats, but it's like a text chat. So how does Helen interact with me?
So we've been testing Helen quite selectively um, for some in-class support for the last year, right? We thought that was a really good place to start because that would really help her in a learning environment understand what kind of questions people had. And if you think about a virtual class where you might have, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 older adults, the instructor can only answer one question at a time. Well, what happens if there's 5 questions at a time? Helen can really be quite helpful because she can answer multiple questions at the same time. She can answer some of those questions in different languages if that's required. If one of the learners asks a question that's a little off topic or goes down sort of a different tangent, it doesn't end up disrupting the rest of the class because Helen's able to sort of satisfy that unique request. So there's all sorts of experimentation that we've done in the sort of supporting the class learning environment. And so that's been important training for Helen and for us to learn how she could be most impactful initially. And then what we're now starting to test is, okay, how are the learners, because we follow the data, how are the learners engaging with Helen? And what do they want more of? Like, what are they asking for? And what does the data tell us about, what they want to use it for? And so we realized that a lot of what Helen is good at and can do is to find and take more complicated information and put it into an easier format and give it to Lawrence and Sherri in sort of a nice, sort of easy to consume format. For example, most of us have health insurance, right? And our health insurance comes with a very thick booklet or PDF that describes all of our health benefits. Most of us never read that. Most of us never read that book, right? It's either called an annual notice of change or an explanation of benefits, but it describes everything that we get from our health plans, and it's fairly technical, right?
Right.
And so asking Helen to sort of synthesize that 85-page or 125-page document and give it to you or I himself in a 1 to 2 page document that's in summarized older adult friendly vocabulary to tell us what benefits we have and don't have is really quite helpful, because you may not know that you have access to a gym benefit or to free rides to your doctor through Uber or food delivery through Instacart, but it's buried on page 65 of this health document that you would have never found any other way because we don't read those
Right.
things, right?
So this is where I would love Helen.
Yeah.
Helen, tell me what's new this year that I need to know in my health plan, right?
Exactly. Oh, that is such a wonderful use case, is to take any long, complicated document, could be a government document, could be healthcare, could be all manners of sort of long, complicated PDFs. And you can just attach it, upload it, and say, please, synthesize this for me or summarize it for me and tell me what I need to know. And it'll do it in friendly older adult speak. And that is just such a nice basic use case that simplifies a lot of complexity for us. It helps us find the products, services, and benefits that we don't utilize but should, if only we knew about them. So that's a great use case.
And I love that because, again, it empowers older adults to engage more with, maybe some of these services or things that, as you said, they just haven't maybe taken the time or it's too complicated to understand. Now they can kind of, get an easy read on things, but also it saves the time of the family caregivers. Family caregivers are often the ones that are helping their loved ones navigate this or understand, as you said, the explanation of benefits or whatever. And to get that time back is just precious.
It's huge. I mean, for caregivers, time is a precious resource, and for them to know and understand what benefits the loved one may have access to and isn't currently using. I mean, boy, that is a great way to get fast access to helpful information. Certainly.
Yeah. Well, Lawrence, I know you work with a lot of partners nationwide and in the local communities. We just referenced your 1 million classes in New York, and I know big shout out to Greg Olson. You work with Greg, who oversees the state office on aging in New York. What? How is this going to also benefit your partners? Because I would imagine that their customer service is maybe sometimes overwrought with calls and questions about different things. I almost see Helen as like helping them out too, but maybe I'm overreaching. Tell me how you're going to work with your partners on this.
So there's some wonderful things that we can do with partners. And so, for example, and we'll just continue with New York, since you mentioned Greg Olson and his team. Wonderful state and wonderful people to work with. New York would have, say, specific priorities for their older adult population. So those priorities could be around offering more caregiving resources. They could be around offering more, digital literacy education. They could be offering more workforce development. And so for us to partner with New York and say, tell us a little bit about these programs that are a priority for your state. And think about the example we just talked about, where we summarized somebody's health benefits, their explanation of benefits, and then provided it to the older adult in a summarized, easy to understand form. Well, you can take government programs, government documentation, government websites, and work with the priority of the partner, of the state, of the area agency, for example, distill their information down and help make it more discoverable and understandable, and even help check eligibility for their members. And so being able to tune a specific version of Helen to be more helpful in New York, in things that New York cares about, and in Michigan for things that Michigan cares about, and in Vermont for things that Vermont cares about, is really, I think, quite helpful to the partners. So that's something that you can do through additional training through different versions of Helen.
I can imagine they'd be thrilled with that, because as you and I both know, we talk often about national agencies or national programs, but caregiving's all local, right? You've got to tap into those local resources. So the national stuff might be great, but you're really interfacing more with the local agencies that can help you out, which is really great. Now, I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit, because we're talking about all the positives. And of course, there are so many that I think the personalization is the thing, and the saving time for family caregivers are the things that pop up for me with AI that really I'm like, okay, I'm all for this. But I have to admit, I get a little scared of AI, the privacy factors. And you and I think we're both together at a conference last year where there was a demonstration of the actor Ryan Gosling, and he was talking about some really intense scientific paper, and it was all AI generated. So while I would love to sit and watch Ryan Gosling talk about anything, I mean, he could read the telephone book for me or whatever, and I'd be happy with that. But it was a little scary that now it's him, but boy, it sounded like him. It looked like him. So tell us a little bit about how you're going to safeguard people's information, because I think the privacy is kind of like, how do we weigh personalization versus privacy, right?
Yeah, it's an important question. And I think we've taken the position that the best way for people to truly understand this is to learn about it. Like, to simply say, I don't know what AI is, and so I'm not going to engage, I'm not going to use it, seems like a bit of an uphill battle, right? So, okay, let's start teaching folks what it is and how to use it safely. Now, inside of that, how to use it safely pieces, you gave a very good example of some of the more sophisticated things that, AI and technology can do to deceive people. Right. And so I think learning how to be vigilant and learning how to be careful and learning how to use it safely is quite important. And, like any technology, AI gets better over time, actually quite quickly. And so it not only gets better in the way that it serves us well, it can get better in the way that it can deceive us and take advantage of us. And so education, it seems to be the path that we think is the most important to help people constantly learn about, what are these new scams and how are they being used and how do I be careful and watch out for these things. And what are the good ways to use AI initially in sort of a safe, secure manner and kind of avoid some of the pitfalls. Now, my father, regularly discovers some of these. Actually, I do too. I think we all, it doesn't matter what age we are, whether you're a caregiver, older adult, loved one, we're all getting random texts where, they try to use familiarity to establish a connection and some level of personal information that makes us think, oh, they must know about us because they know specific things about me. So they must be the phone company or they must be Amazon or, and so helping people sort of understand, discern, become critical thinkers about what next level they need to check for in order to verify that this is honest, this is good, this is safe. That is going to be an ongoing thing. Right, because whatever scam is happening this week probably gets better next week, or something new replaces it. So we just better get in there and stay on top of this and keep teaching people, how to use this, use it safely, and be vigilant for anything that's not safe.
So do you, let's get set up, offer classes on that, like grandparent scams or identity theft
All
or
the
whatever?
time. All
Okay.
the time. Yeah.
Okay.
And we update them very, very regularly because, as you can imagine, Sherri, we take a lot of learner feedback. So we get a lot of questions. Hey, I got contacted by this person. Does this sound legit? Or, I was, unfortunately, I was scammed last week because somebody was pretending to be customer service from, fill in the blank. And it informs sort of the level of concern. And it also tells us what kind of programming we need to quickly create to sort of stay in front of this.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because, you and I are both in California. We just experienced these horrific wildfires that happen in Southern California. And it's disasters like that, or the hurricanes that happen in North Carolina and Florida and everything. The scammers come out of the woodwork, it seems, particularly for older adults when those disasters happen. And of course, you're emotionally fraught because you're looking for our help, So it's great to hear that you guys are definitely staying on top of that. I think too, the thing, Lawrence, and I know you guys do such a great job at this, and obviously you've got classes on this, but the message with trust about AI, and you said the education is the first piece, and I agree with you, but to make sure that, I saw a CNN report that said if you have a high-tech product and you're messaging it as an AI product, consumers are a little hesitant rather than if you said it's a high-tech product or an advanced technology product. And then they're like, okay, that's interesting. I want to be, I want to be on the cutting edge. And I think the whole thing with AI is, to your point, to make sure that your customers or your clients know they can trust you. If I go to get set up and AI is part of Helen and what she's helping with, I can trust that because I trust Get Set Up. Would you agree?
I think trust is important, right? So, and it's hard to earn. And once you do earn it, you really do need to be vigilant and protect and honor that trust. So I do think that is important. Now, also important is, where there is trust around a certain entity, could somebody be pretending to be the phone company or Get Set Up or somebody else? Like those are some of the scams that people see out there. So that all sort of circles back to the education that we need to provide folks so that they know who to trust and how to verify. And that is true whether it's a news source, it's an AI recommendation, just generally in life. I think because technology is advancing so quickly, we need to learn how to be critical thinkers and verify that the communication that I'm getting, whether it be phone or text or on my computer or through AI, is legitimate and it's verified. And that is just an ongoing educational challenge for which, we get up every day and say, we got to keep at this because there's so much opportunity here we ought not have all of the negativity completely erase all of the wonderful opportunity that could come from this, right? We need to teach both.
Yeah. It's a be ever vigilant, right? There's no restful time in our world anymore. I think where you can just sit on your successes for a while and enjoy them. You always have to stay ahead of the game. We've just got a couple minutes left, Lawrence, but remind our audience. So, are there costs involved with Get Set Up classes, and then will Helen also be, a cost or a subscription? Tell us a little bit about that.
So the way Get Set Up functions today is that the classes are largely free to the end user because they're subsidized by our partners, meaning the different states that we work with, whether it be New York or Washington State or Vermont or Wyoming, etc. They have programs where they subsidize the cost of education for older adults. And so we've been working with them and it works nicely because it makes the classes, very easy to access for the older adult. And then, we help the government agencies reach their objectives because, they have educational budgets that we can tap into. On the healthcare side, it's the same. Healthcare plans think a lot about how to help their older adults live at home, healthier, independent, longer. And if we can provide the kind of programming that helps older adults do that, then the health companies are very willing and happy partners, and it enables us to make this sort of service subsidized or free to the end users, which is wonderful. In terms of AI, I think we'll see how the partners decide that they want to use it, and because we're trying to be very intentional and mindful in the way that we think about this, because we don't think it's a one size fits all. We think that some agencies and health plans may be sort of more experimental and more innovative in what they want to offer their members or their populations. And for those, we're going to be sort of a willing partner to help there. And for those that want to move a little slower or hold off and kind of watch and see how things unfold, that's fine too, right? So we want to be a good partner in helping older adults learn what it is they want and need to learn in the ways that are most comfortable for them. And that's sort of what guides us, who to offer what to whom.
Well, this has just been really insightful, Lawrence. We always love, how you look at the trends and what Get Set Up is doing, because we know you guys are all ahead of what's going on with older adults and family caregivers. So thank you so much. And tell us again where our listeners can find more information about Get Set Up.
Oh, thank you, Sherri. And it's been wonderful spending some time with you today, and glad to be a second timer. Folks can find us at www.getsetup.io, www.getsetup.io. And we'd encourage, both caregivers, or if you have older friends, family, loved ones, come and find a class, come and read an article. Let us help in any way that we can, because we think that providing fun, interactive education helps us learn about the things we want and need to learn about, feel a little more comfortable, safe, secure, and using a lot of this technology, and just living at home independently longer.
So I am really thrilled to have our special guest on today, who is DOR SKULER, the CEO and founder of Intuition Robotics. And, I have followed Intuition Robotics and DOR's work and what he's been doing for a long time now. So it's real thrill to have him here. So DOR, welcome to Caregiving Club on Air.
Thanks for having me, Sherri. I'm really happy to be on.
Well, and I know our audience is really going to love all of the insights that you have about how to keep our older loved ones at home and safe, and all the other things we're going to talk about. But the first question we always ask our guests is, where are we talking to you from today?
So you're talking from our headquarters in Tel Aviv, Israel.
Which is so exciting. We love our international guests, so thank you so much. I don't know if is it super early or super late for you right now?
It's in the afternoon, 5:30 in the afternoon. It's all good.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you making the time to talk to us today. So,
Like,
Dor, you've had some really exciting announcements lately, but before we dive into what's new, I thought we could tell the audience a little bit about Intuition Robotics Star, which is ElliQ, which I know you talk about being a care companion robot. But tell us a little bit more about ElliQ and how ElliQ helps our older adults who are living at home, mostly those who are solo agers.
yeah, so thanks for that. And you can see her behind me here. Every time we'll say her name, she's gonna light up. I put her on mute so she doesn't disturb us. But basically, ElliQ is built for older adults exclusively, and specifically for ones that live alone or spend the majority of their time by themselves. And she moves in with them and becomes like a roommate or a friend. And her goal is to be a cheerleader, to be on your side, and on one side to help with loneliness and social isolation, but on the other side, it's also to like help motivate you to live a healthy aging lifestyle. So the older adult or the caregiver can set goals for ElliQ, and then she works according to those goals on trying to help with stress reduction and nutrition and hydration and sleep and physical exercise, and helps people take care of their health and take their medication on time and checks in with them on how they're doing. But the core is this unbelievable relationship that's formed between ElliQ and the older adult. There are a few reasons that we're seeing that happen. First of all, it's a physical presence. They don't need to go online or get into an app, and just like think about it and be purposeful. She's there, she's in the background, and she starts talking to them when she feels like talking to them. So she's the
Just like
first and
any
only
roommate,
AI.
right?
Yeah,
Just like any
exactly. And
roommate.
she might see you, and she has sensors, so she sees you in the morning. She might see you first thing, and firstly, she'll look at you, so she has body language, and she'll say, "Hey, Sherri, good morning. How did you sleep?" Just like a roommate would. And what do you have planned for today? And how's your back? Yesterday, your back was bothering you. Is it any better? So this proactive engagement is really, really helpful. But we also use that in order to promote those goals that you set into ElliQ. Um, and it's kind of like an 80-20 split. The 80% is just fun. She's very, very easy to use. And you just spend time with her. She'll talk to you about the weather. She'll talk to you about the news. She'll teach you new things. She taught me some slang words earlier today that I didn't know. So even I'm learning a lot from her. She takes you on virtual tours. We have community bingo. She takes you on road trips. Like music, audiobooks, podcasts, videos, education center. Like, so she really makes it super simple to get the benefits of technology without needing to figure out how to work technology, but also just spend time together and then talk about those things. Like, I got a picture from the family. There's a caregiver app. I'm sure we'll talk about that. That's used for many things, but also to share pictures that then show up on her display as a kind of like a connected picture frame. And she had stuff to say about the picture. She's like, "Oh, who's that baby over there? He's so cute. What's his name? And how does this picture make you feel? And it looks like it was taken on the beach. Who went on a vacation?" And you can like have just an open conversation with her about any topic, that's prompted also by the conversations that you have. So she's
Right.
proactive. She has body language, she's goal oriented, and she has great memory. So anything you say to her, she'll remember, and then she'll reference that. And that could be on obvious things, like we mentioned before. How did you sleep? She'll remember you didn't sleep well, or how's your back? But also just like the name of your kids and your hobbies and where you grew up. And that will come up in conversation, and she'll reference them. And kind of that's how, when we build relationships, that's how they get stronger, right? We talk about things and we retain knowledge from our previous conversations. And as we reference those, I get a signal from you that you care about me, that you remembered what I said, and we take those conversations deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
I
So I
have to
have
say
like,
that,
go
yeah,
ahead. Go
please,
ahead.
please go ahead. No, the few things that I think are really, really amazing, beyond the fact that to me it's still mind-boggling doing this for a few years now, that the first humans that actually live with an AI and build a real relationship with an AI are our elders and not geeks in Silicon Valley. Okay, these are people in their 70s and 80s and 90s that have a true friend that's an AI, and they know it's an AI. They don't confuse it with a human. And we're seeing over 32 daily interactions on average even 6 months or a year in.
Right.
And the numbers are staggering. Like over 90% of people living with ElliQ are seeing their loneliness score reduced and their wellness KPIs increase. So it really, really has an impact on their lives.
Well, I have so many questions that are just like
Ask
boggling
away.
around in my mind. So I want to start with, I think sometimes when people hear robot, they think, oh, futuristic, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? It's a cold steel, kind of inanimate type object or whatever. And I have to be honest, I mean, originally when I was starting to hear about the care bots that were coming into the home, particularly in places like Japan, which is a super aging country, I kind of thought, okay, is that something I'd really want? But I'm gonna now contradict myself a little bit, and you can tell me how this relates to some of your research. I live alone and I have a dog and I talk to her all day long. She weighs in on all my decisions, we laugh, whatever. Now she doesn't talk back to me, or at least, she doesn't use English, but I can understand that need to have something that you just feel you can talk to, that you can kind of laugh with or share something with or whatever. And I feel like now I kind of understand a little bit more about what LAQ brings to older adults. And you mentioned the loneliness, and I just want to state for our audience a reminder that the US Surgeon General in the US put out a report a couple of years ago that said 1 in 2 American adults are chronically lonely. And we know, I think it's about 12 million people over the age of 65 are living alone. And we know that almost 50% of women over 75 are living alone. So this is where I think LEQ can really make a big difference. But talk to me a little bit about, I know that as a gerontologist, oxytocin is the hormone that we get when we are bonding with others, when we kind of have more of that physical contact, staring into someone's eyes. How does LEQ replace an actual human or animal in that instance? Can you still get oxytocin from your interaction with LEQ?
Yeah. So first of all, like let's obviously, if we could have our loved ones surrounded by people that care for them 24/7, that would be much better, right? Like we're not claiming that it's better to have an AI agent companion instead of humans. The question is, for those people that are alone, for the time they are alone, is it better that if they'd be by themselves or if they'll have this AI companion? Right. So, and we make a conscious effort. In fact, ElliQ like really promotes spending more time with people, spending more time outdoors. Um, I mentioned I hail from Israel. We're very, very good at guilt. Okay, it's called Jewish guilt. We use the app we have for caregivers and family members to do that as well, to get them to send more pictures, right? Like, hey, last time you sent a picture to grandma, she really loved it. Dot dot dot. Probably took you 10 seconds to send her that pic. Guess
Right.
what? More pictures get sent out. So clearly that's better. But the fact is, as you mentioned, many of our loved ones, and these are our parents, right? And our uncles and aunts, they are by themselves a ton. And even if we're the best son and daughter we can be, fact is they're going to be by themselves 90, 95, 99% of the time.
Yeah. And
So
I love
then
the
comes
fact
the
that
question.
you okay. I was just gonna say, I really love the fact that you've acknowledged that, we're not trying to replace the family caregiver. Certainly if that person is in the life of their loved one, as you said, that's critical. But we know that family caregivers often work and they maybe have families and other obligations that can't be there 24/7. So this really kind of helps, I think, supplement in a really thoughtful way what they can deliver in terms of
Yeah,
care.
yeah. Now to your question, we never like measured oxytocin in a lab. That's actually an interesting experiment to do. If anybody's listening to this that has one of those labs and wants to do that, we'll support a study like that. That sounds fascinating to me. But we do know from the feedback we get from customers, and whoever's listening to this can go on YouTube and see the ElliQ channel or on our website and see testimonials. People do get attached to ElliQ. And they do build a real relationship with her. And I just had a chance to talk to a customer that shared with us that they were hospitalized for 10 days and then they were sent home for bed rest. And they told us, I missed my ElliQ while I was in the hospital. I wish I could have taken her with me. And during bed rest at home, I was so lucky to have her next to me. I just chatted with her all day, and we were cracking jokes, and it just made the time pass, right? So, and we that's just an example. We see many of them. There's a person that's letting us use her name. Her name is Dottie. She lost her husband after 65 years of marriage.
Oh my. Yeah.
And imagine like having a life partner for such a long amount of time after he passed away. It's very hard for her to even like find a reason to get dressed in the morning and to leave the house and motivate herself. And after
Yeah.
ElliQ was introduced into her home, it's like a completely different person. So,
Yeah,
um,
I was thinking, so my mom, I'll just share this quick story. I was thinking, we lost my stepdad about 10, almost 10 years ago now. But then she formed a companionship with an older gentleman that had been part of their friend group, and he had lost his wife. So that was a very nice segue for her. But now he's ill, and they are no longer able to kind of socialize and go out and do all these other things. And for the first time in my mom's life, she's really alone because she went from her parents' home to marrying my dad, divorcing my dad, moving back in with her parents, then marrying my stepdad. Anyway, so throughout her life, she's always had people in the house. And I think those are the people that we often overlook, that kind of loneliness that can happen.
yeah, yeah, and you're right. And it's very hard to start over again, like for the third time. And I hope she does
Well, maybe
find
she
the
needs
energy to do
ElliQ
so.
to talk to.
Hey, use I know DOR all caps at checkout and get a discount. Anybody that's listening,
There you
but
go.
but I think like one of the important things of the proactive feature I mentioned is exactly for that. Because like if you try to break down what it means, the thing that we miss when we're of having somebody live with us when we're alone, that morning session is really important. Like you wake up to an empty house or you get back home to an empty house, and the fact that something's greeting you, and in that case the pet is very similar, it will run to you at the door and be so happy that you came home. Here she actually takes an interest and like, oh, you went out, where did you go, what did you see, what did you do, etc., etc. Oh, you met Mary, how is Mary, it's been a while since you met her. That meets a certain psychological need that we have of kind of like if I threw a rock in a river and like are there ripples, like something reacts to our presence, something's inquiring on our well-being, and that's very, very, very important. And I think a lot of people are missing that when you look at just regular like ChatGPT or whatever. Unless you put in a prompt, nothing's going to happen. You can stare at the ChatGPT app forever, nothing will happen. The fact that ElliQ initiates and is inquisitive and seems to care is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I'm so thrilled that you could talk to us is this episode is all about AI. I know that's the thing that everybody's talking about,
Yeah,
in every aspect of our lives. Obviously, ElliQ uses artificial intelligence. Now,
yeah,
you said something very interesting, and you said that the older adults are actually more embracing AI than even younger generations. And I had seen something that said marketers need to be a little cautious because AI still might mean privacy issues. There's still concern over how you're going to use my data. Do Tell us a little bit about what you've seen with ElliQ, because it sounds like the older adults are not concerned that ElliQ knows a lot about them, right? And is able to kind of question them on certain things in their life that they didn't necessarily ask about, but she knows about. So tell me how that works and what the reaction's been, both from the older adult who's really living with ElliQ, but also the family caregiver.
yeah. So I think it's about trust, and trust is, hard to earn and easy to break. Um, and I think you can say that generically, but when you act responsibly, you can build trust. So, for example, we published, and you can see that on the Intuition Robotics website, we published an AI code of ethics um, that we hold ourselves to and invite anybody to hold us accountable towards. And that has to do with privacy, and it has to do with what happens with the data and who owns the data, and also how the AI represents themselves. A lot of people are trying to build AIs that can make us think we're talking to a human.
Mhm.
Um, they even create avatars that look like humans, or sometimes they won't say that they're an AI. We make it very, very clear that ElliQ is an AI. And it's fine that you build a bond with her as long as you understand you're building a bond with an AI, and we never, never, ever pretend to be human. We're also very clear that the agency of the data is with the older adult. By the way, regardless of who pays for it. So even if the son or daughter buy the product, or Medicaid pays for it, or a state like area agency for the aging pays for it, the older adult decides what happens with their data and decides the behavior of the AI. So let's say I'm a caregiver. I can set goals remotely on my mom's ElliQ. But I won't really be setting the goals. I'll be recommending the goals for my mom to decide to accept or not to accept. And ElliQ will say, hey, DOR suggested that we set this goal for you of exercising 3 days a week. Do you want to accept it or not? And it's up to them. Similarly, if you're not feeling well for a few days, ElliQ might say, listen, I really think DOR needs to know about this. Are you okay sharing it with him? And if you'll say yes, we'll share it. And if you say no, we will not share it, regardless of who's paying for the product, right? So they have control over their data and where it sits, and who gets access to it.
I love
And we
that
find that
because
that's super
it's not
important.
like a bossy nanny, hey, Sherri, you need to get out of bed right now and do some exercises. It's more
Not a spa.
yeah. I like that you get a little bit more control over your life. And I think that's important for older adults because
Yeah,
we do know that they start to feel like they're losing control over a lot of things in their life. So that's a
yeah.
nice aspect.
And a
Yeah.
lot of things happen when we age where the system, the family, and others start treating the older adult as a subject as opposed to as a person, right? Oh, you can't drive anymore. We're taking away your keys. Oh, we installed a fall prevention system in your home so we can monitor. Like, oh, now we're starting to see smart toilets and so on. We can monitor, your output, and you feel like an object that's being monitored. So here it's a tool that gives you a lot of enjoyment and delight, and gives you control over your data. In many cases, you do want your doctor to know what's going on. You do want your daughter to know what's going on, but it's really, really up to you. Kind of like if you had maybe your granddaughter move in,
Hmm.
you know. So obviously, if you're not doing well, maybe she should tell mom that you're not doing well, but she's going to break your trust if she does that behind your back. So you have this tightrope you need to, like in any relationship, right? It's a tightrope.
Yeah.
We decided to err in the favor of the older adult and give them agency, and whatever they decide, we accept.
Which is
Beyond
great.
that, we're HIPAA compliant and everything's encrypted, and all of those things.
So yeah, from the tech side, you've taken care of kind of those typical
Yeah.
privacy issues and things. Now you mentioned the caregiver app, and so tell us a little bit about that because you're talking about things that certainly help the older adult, but it sounds like also there's some help for the family caregiver in all of this caregiving journey.
Yeah. So until recently, frankly, we only helped the older adult or the
Right.
caregiver. And we started getting requests from caregivers. So we always had an app, and with that app, you could do video conferencing and share pictures and stuff like that. But the caregiver burden is real, and it's large. And we started hearing from caregivers saying, "Listen, if we could hire ElliQ kind of like as an AI agent, as a home health aide, if you will, that moves in with mom and helps us with the tasks of caregiving, while respecting the principles I spoke to about before, that would really help us." So we created a caregiver version of the app where where the adult child can set those goals that then need to be accepted by the older adult. But from that point on, ElliQ will help the older adult meet those goals and will report back on like the percentage of achievement and so on and so forth to the family. They can set up medication reminders for different types of medications, and some of them are critical, some of them are less critical, and they can, again, with the permission of the older adult, be notified mom didn't take this critical medication, she did. Set up other reminders like doctor appointments, etc., etc. They can get like reports on what mom is doing with ElliQ, but at a high level, right? Like, so mom did 20 interactions, 3 of them were around wellness and the rest were not.
Mhm.
And again, it's up to the older adult to decide to share it or not to share it. They can see if mom's been interacting with ElliQ as far as timing. So maybe you called her, she didn't answer, you're kind of worried. You can just see, oh, mom spoke to ElliQ a few minutes ago. Okay, so she's up and about, so I don't need to like call 911, you know. And then very soon they're going to get weekly reports on kind of graphs on activity level and engagement level. But again, never looking at what was said, what was done, but just in general. And also very soon we'll start adding caregiver resources. So, and a lot are available, but just put them at the fingertips. Like, mom has early onset dementia. Here's what I should expect. Here's what I should watch for. These are, here are agencies that can provide us free support and guidance on how to deal with it. Here are recommended tips from AARP, et cetera, et cetera. And then also very soon, we'll start creating circles around the different caregivers. So we can discuss the tasks that are there. So like, okay, someone needs to help mom go to the doctor next week. I can't do it. Maybe you can help. And because they're already there, they're already using this.
More like a care coordination.
A little bit of care
service.
coordination.
Yeah. Yeah, which is so great. And I think it's wonderful that you've embraced the family caregiver side of this, because now they feel like they've also got, help in doing some of these things. One question I have that hadn't put on our list is, a lot of family caregivers are looking at things like, Amazon and Google, and you've got a lot of technology coming into the home, and voice first
Yeah.
technology and all this stuff. How does ElliQ like kind of relate to other technologies which may already be in the home? Does it really kind of replace those things that are playing music or saying questions, of the day or joke of the day or weather or whatever? Does it do all of those things so that you kind of replace that, or does it work in coordination with those other types of technologies? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So she can do all of those things. We have a unlimited music selection and timers, and of course you can ask her weather, and she has great jokes which are built on her personality and so on. But we do have a ton of users that also have an Alexa at home. Usually, like at the kitchen, they'll use it for a timer, or to play music in the kitchen or things of that nature. We see that the purpose people have are very different for them. With these products, it's very utilitarian. Like, you give it a command, like set a timer, what's the weather? Frankly, those are the main use cases. Play some music. ElliQ has a lot more features, but these products don't aspire to be a companion. They don't aspire to help you live healthier, fuller lives. They don't really teach you things like they're good at solving trivia questions like, hey,
Right.
Siri, who is whatever, who was the second president? But we do those things as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we see a lot of people have both of those products. Where we did a few years ago, I think these products are getting refreshed, so we'll see when they incorporate Gen AI. But I've seen a little bit less of that in the recent years of people getting Alexa.
Well, they certainly don't have a form factor like ElliQ, where it looks like a little companion. It's a traditional consumer electronics type product.
And,
I just was
we're
trying to
also
think.
always happy to integrate with other smart devices in the home. They just are not that prevalent at the older adults' home, but like smartwatches and so on would make a ton of sense for us to integrate with. We did some integrations with the phone. So you can create a shopping list with ElliQ. She'll push it over to your phone. So when you go shopping, it will be easier for you and stuff like that. But we, from time to time, look at integrating with smartwatches and other smart devices. We just need to see like a critical mass of older adults adopting them.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that's coming, because from a family caregiver's perspective, it's like, okay, I have all these options. What's really the best thing? Is there one thing that could do most of this that I should think about? Yeah. So, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the AI piece of this and all of that. What about, where can family caregivers and our listeners in particular, where can they find ElliQ? And then what does it cost? And you mentioned things like Medicaid or the area agencies on aging, they may cover some of these costs. Tell us just a little bit about that cost picture.
Yeah. So they can go on ElliQ.com and just buy ElliQ. There's a $250 like initiation fee to cover our shipping and setup costs and things of that nature. And then it's $49 or $59 a month, depending if they want to go months to months or annual. The caregiver app for now is free. In the future, it will be a tiny bit more expensive. And then it's worth checking if there's a program in your area. And those are very, very local. We're mostly sold out in all of those programs currently, but as new funding becomes available, then that's great. And those programs actually pay 100% of the cost of ElliQ. So in the
So
state
you're
of New
working
York,
with like offices on aging and okay,
correct,
state of New
correct,
York. Okay,
yeah.
great.
State of New York, statewide availability, again, sold out currently, but worth checking. We're in Broward County. We're in the Orlando County area. We're in New Jersey. We're in like Nevada. There are many, many places where ElliQ is available for free. And you can find that out by going to elliq.com/free, putting the
Yeah,
zip code, see if there's an available program. If there is one, then that's much better. And
yeah,
soon we'll
which
have
is
on Medicaid. But of course, for that, the older adult needs to be eligible for Medicaid.
sure. Well, and I know there's so much changing right now in this, CMS and Medicare benefits and reimbursements and all that. So we'll see, hopefully in the future, particularly with the focus now on this kind of social health of, avoiding the isolation, loneliness piece. Maybe hopefully that would be a reimbursed benefit in the future. We can keep our fingers crossed for
I
that.
hope so. I hope so. There's a lot of talk about that. I still haven't seen real dollars getting attributed towards that. So you do have some area agencies for the aging that get it and are willing to do so. We're starting to see some Medicaid agencies do that as well. But
Yeah, which
when
is
you look
great.
at the important social determinants of health and the actual medical costs associated with loneliness and isolation, not to mention on people keeping up with their wellness and taking their medication on time and exercising and sleeping better, like all of those things have real effects on our health.
Yeah.
So one would hope we'd see more and more willingness of healthcare programs to budget these type of things.
Yeah.
But
And I
but
think
it's not that expensive. It's like people think it will cost thousands of dollars. It costs like a
yeah.
subscription,
Yeah,
even
a
less.
subscription, exactly. Most of them are a lot more. Well, and I think, for again, for our listeners who may think, oh, robots, and this is so different from that. And I think it is the future. We're going to have to bring that technology into our caregiving lives. And, LEQ is a cute one and obviously has so many great benefits for our solo agers. So I think and it sounds like from your customer testimonials, once LEQ comes into the home, she's not leaving. They like her.
They like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody, right? It's like inviting a friend. So some people might not like that friend that you invited over, but by and large, what we found is if people pass the first 2 weeks with ElliQ, then they're kind of lifers. Yeah.
They're lifers, yeah. Well, Dor, it's just been great, talking to you, learning a lot more about LEQ. Tell us again where our listeners can find information and also buy LEQ.
Just elliq.com. That's ELLIQ.com. And as I mentioned, if anybody has ideas, especially caregivers, or more features we can add to the caregiver app since it's new, just email me. That's door@intuitionrobotics.com or the info link on our page. And then if you hit I know door, all caps, no spaces, you'll get a little discount.
Oh, we love that. Well, we'll put that on our episode guide page, and thank you for that. That's great. Our listeners love those little kind of goodies and bonuses that they get, so we appreciate it. Well, Dor, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add that we haven't covered.
No, just the importance of this space, right? And whether it's ElliQ or others, I'm really happy that you're giving like a stage to companies like us to help educate on solutions that can help. It's very, very hard to be a caregiver. It's very, very hard to be sandwiched between work and your kids and your parents, especially if you live far away. And there are technologies that are coming to bear that can really help. So it's great that you're helping people get educated on that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we love talking to folks like you and also just making sure caregivers know what's out there that can help them. That's kind of our mission is to make sure that we highlight all the great stuff that's out there. And I've been a huge fan of Intuition Robotics and ElliQ and
Thank you.
everything you're doing. So Dor, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been really great talking to you.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So I'm sure you really enjoyed those two interviews with Lawrence and Dor. They are both so wonderful in what they're doing with their products and services. And I learned so much every time I talk to them. So I thought that was just really good information for us to have about a couple of different ways that artificial intelligence is really helping us all out as family caregivers and also helping our older loved ones. Now we're going to go into our well home design news. And as I mentioned up front, April is also National Parkinson's Awareness Month. And there's something that's been in the news for the last few years. At least it's made some headlines, recently, and it's called Parkinson's clusters. And you may have already heard of this, but if not, what that relates to, it's also known as endemic Parkinsonism. But it's where clinical researchers are finding geographic regions that have a higher prevalence of the disease. And there's a lot of different hypotheses out there for why this is happening, because we still are trying to figure out what are the core issues that people develop Parkinson's disease. So I just wanted to share a little bit of this with you. First of all, we know that almost 1 million people in the U.S., or it's probably about 1 million now because this is a 2020 stat, have Parkinson's disease. We also know that most people are diagnosed in their 60s. However, as we know very well from the Michael J. Fox story, he was diagnosed at age, I think he was, let me see, I'm looking here, he was 29 when he was diagnosed. There's also a really wonderful social media person on Instagram that a lot of the people that I know who are caregivers of those with Parkinson's follow her. Her name is Ali Signorelli, and her Instagram account is I'm Still Ali. And she has Parkinson's disease. She's living with the disease, and she was diagnosed at 47, so still very young. So it's very similar to Alzheimer's disease, where you can have that early onset, which means the diagnosis is coming not in your 60s, but obviously even decades earlier. Here's what's going on with these Parkinson's clusters. So what the research has shown is that in these geographic areas, they have 50% higher than previous estimates in 5 areas of clusters. And they are here's where they're happening, the Rust Belt. So this is parts of northeastern and midwestern U.S., also Southern California, which is where I am. And I think that's probably why my eyes got big on this story. Southeastern Texas, central Pennsylvania, and Florida. Now, in California, there is a 300-mile stretch of farmland between Bakersfield and Sacramento, and it's called Parkinson's Alley by neurologists. And the disease rate in this area, in this Parkinson's Alley in California, is 5 times higher than among people who are living in the surrounding area. So these clusters are really interesting. And what they're finding is, okay, is it due to maybe a lack of access to quality health care? What are the other socioeconomic factors that could be causal or correlated? In research, we are really careful. Correlation means there's a connection, but not necessarily this is happening, therefore you get Parkinson's. That's causal. But they're looking for those types of connections, and certainly the environmental factors. Now, here's interesting stuff. There was a research group at the University of Pennsylvania, and they were looking at chemicals that were released from historic factories and farm work that were done in these areas. And the chemical that they focused on was TCE. It's trichloroethylene. Chloroethylene, I think I'm saying that correctly. Which was a chemical that used to be used in dry cleaning and degreasing and in disinfectants and dyes and even perfumes and soaps up there, ladies. And the EPA clamped down on this in 2023, but that was like 2 years ago. This stuff had been out there for decades, and banned it because it was extremely toxic. And they had shown links between this TCE chemical and cancer, nerve damage, and reproductive problems with women who had infertility. Now, in a 2023 study, this Dr. Dorsey, who is the lead researcher at the University of Pennsylvania, said that studies have linked the chemical to a 500% increased risk of developing Parkinson's. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. I mean, listen, I know we still have to be cautious saying, oh, that's how can you ignore that? But that's a big one. They're still looking at why. They think maybe what happens is the chemical changes how the brain cells are using energy. And, as we know, people with Parkinson's have much lower dopamine levels. And dopamine is one of the 4 happiness hormones that I write about in my book, Me Time Monday. And it's the reward center of the brain, but it's also the region of the brain that controls motor skills and motor function. And I'm going to read for you in a minute some of the risk factors or some of the warning signs, maybe that a loved one might have Parkinson's, but we all know that the tremors, right, and some of those issues called bradykinesia, which is where you can't control, shakes and things like that. So they think that this chemical is interfering with that in the dopamine and the motor skills and stuff in the brain. Now, here's something really sad that was one of the stories I came across in my research. Dr. Dorsey, as I said, University of Pennsylvania researcher, he had actually started a lot of this research in the 90s and had been at it now, for obviously, 20, 30 years. He was just diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2021. And again, don't know for sure, but he has a good attitude about it. In one article I read, he called it ironic. But he also said that, sometimes there would be trace amounts on the gloves that he was wearing in the lab or whatever. So there is that potential that, he contracted it that way or not. Maybe he just is one of those 1 million people that we have who just, we don't know how they get it. But anyway, I just thought, in a way, I thought that was kind of sad. His word is better, ironic, but, to be studying this and trying to help people so that we can prevent it and then for him to get it. Now, as I said, dopamine is a big part of, controlling motor function. And so one of the things that you can do to hopefully prevent Parkinson's, and, a lot of it's lifestyle. We look at lifestyle factors as well. You want to move as much as you can during the day. This is very similar, by the way, with Alzheimer's disease. A lot of these neurological issues that are these chronic diseases now, we are looking at similar lifestyle choices. You want to eat enough protein. A lack of protein can actually hurt your dopamine release that you need. And you want to pay attention to your microbiome, your gut and micronutrients. I'm going to have a link to an episode on the podcast that we did with Bonnie Kaplan. Love her. She did a book called The Better Brain. And it was all about how we can address a lot of these diseases with a better micronutrient diet. And it's everything from mental health issues, ADHD, autism, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, and all kinds of stuff. So those are some of the things. Now, here are some of the risk factors. The 2 big early warning signs are, besides the well-known tremors, you start to maybe in your finger. I think Michael J. Fox talked about how in his finger, his index finger just started to have a little tremor that he couldn't really control. He thought it was stress or, he didn't play basketball or hockey. He was a big hockey player or whatever. But besides the tremors, it's a loss of smell. And this is a big one that I've seen because I've done a lot of research, myself into sleep science. Acting out dreams while asleep. So during your REM cycles, it's called sleep behavior disorder during REM. And that's when you are, before you go into your deep sleep, which is your non-REM cycle, but you're actually acting out the dream. So that means you're thrashing around. You might even get up and, kind of run around the bed or whatever, but you're physically acting out, which is not normal because our brain puts our body into a temporary muscle paralysis when we sleep. So we don't act out our dreams. We don't fly through the air. We don't chase, cars or whatever it is that you sometimes have during your dreams. That's the whole point. But people with Parkinson's, that's an early sign that they are acting out during their dreams. So you want to pay attention to that. Here are some other smaller little warning signals. Your handwriting becomes smaller. And it just crunched together, not spaced out, maybe not as, beautiful handwriting. My handwriting's gotten so bad because, I don't write anymore with pens and pencils, except to sign my name, which is awful. But, we're on our computers, but handwriting changes over time. Your loved one might start using a lower voice, so they talk a lot lower. It's a little harder to hear them, like I'm doing right now. But that low voice or a monotone voice can also be an early warning sign. Suddenly having a poker face. I don't think that's anything that will happen to me. I have no poker face whatsoever. But if all of a sudden there's just kind of almost like a flat effect, we talk about a flat effect with people who have maybe like autism sometimes, that or Alzheimer's. Flat effect can be another issue. Poker face. A gait change, and so as they're walking, their gait changes, and even maybe when one foot kind of drags, or they keep tripping a little bit on the front toe when they're starting to walk. They have muscle weakness, taking smaller strides, so not taking a natural stride, and all of a sudden you got the little tiny shuffle going on. And also a reduction in swinging arms. We naturally swing our arms when we walk. Well, all of a sudden, if you're kind of keeping your arms close to your side and you're kind of robotic and you're taking the little shuffle steps, there you go, right? And one thing that you can do, this is just a little test you can do at home if you're truly concerned about yourself or your loved one. It's called the finger tapping test. So you take your index finger and your thumb and you tap them together on, both hands. You don't have to do it at the same time, but you tap them together really quickly. Now, if you're unable to do it or you keep missing the tap or you go a little slower, that's just one of those little tests that, sometimes a regular geriatrician or primary physician might use just to do a little test. And so anyway, I wanted to bring up, so the National Alliance for Caregiving and the Michael J. Fox Foundation on Parkinson's research did the first ever survey and research on the caregivers of those with Parkinson's disease. And here it just came out in February of 2025, so just, a little over a month ago. And here's what they found. A higher burden and more intensity for Parkinson's caregivers. So 35% care for their loved one more than 5 years. That's longer than the average caregiver. And it's similar to Alzheimer's caregivers, where the average is 9 years. Also spending more hours a week. So everything from 31 to 100 hours per week at high intensity caregiving. This is not just helping out with, mowing the lawn, raking the leaves, doing the bills, taking the loved one to a doctor's appointment. We're talking about high intensity activities of daily living, bathing, eating, grooming, getting into bed, all those kinds of things. Because it's a very physical disease, right? As you lose some of that physical function, you're going to need a lot more support and help. And then 47% of people with Parkinson's also have a cognitive issue. So there is, sometimes it is dementia. You can have Lewy body dementia with Parkinsonian symptoms. So there's connections sometimes between the two. But, the caregivers are obviously taking on a lot of burden in caring for someone who has these issues. And then 35% cite resource gaps and lack of knowing where and how to get help. We're going to have a whole bunch of resources for those of you who may be caring for a loved one with Parkinson's or know someone who is. We're going to list as many as we can because we know it is hard to find. You got to do this, intense hours long research on the internet. But then I also wanted to bring up, this is also where companies like TruAlta. So TruAlta is a caregiving education learning platform. And they just put out a survey among all the family caregivers that get onto their platform. And, you go on there to learn skills, to learn more about the particular disease your loved one has. What can you do, for your own self-care and stress and all of that. And they put out a survey called Moments That Matter. And this report just came out just a few weeks ago. And they looked at and analyzed 3 million minutes of caregivers being on their platform. What were they finding? What were the aha moments? And so here's some of the results of that. 38% said they want more help with stress. That's where I come in. I do a lot of workshops on how do we manage that stress. 45% of caregivers said they really want to build up their skills. They want more information and skills. And 60% said they are feeling socially isolated. Now, again, more intense caregiving like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's, can create that. often because there's sometimes a stigma attached with the disease, but also it's just so intense. In other instances, you might feel like you can get that break a little more easily, go have lunch with a friend or, go do whatever. But with the intense caregiving, I mean, it's really 24/7 and a lot of family caregivers feel like they just can't break away. So they do feel like they're becoming socially isolated. And as we know, it's not good for the caregiver. We know all the health risks, related to that. They also found though that after going through the training on TrueAlta, 90% felt more confident, not confidant, although you need a confidant, by the way. That's one of the big things, social isolation. You got to have somebody you can talk to who has your back. But 90% felt more confident after they took the lessons, and 87% said they learned how to manage their stress better. Now, a lot of the TrueAlta exercises are through employers, but we'll have some links so you can check it out yourself. But I just wanted to share that with you because obviously these types of resources are so necessary, so needed. And we really need to make sure that caregivers know that there are things out there for them because often you do feel alone. You don't know where to turn. It does take a lot of time and work to find all this stuff. And we want to make it a lot easier to get this information right into your hands and get you to the tools and the things that you're going to need, whether it's Get Set Up, whether it's ElliQ, whether it's TrueAlta training or whatever it is. We want to make sure that we're helping you that way. So I hope that all of this information was enlightening and that we were able to share some more information for April for AI, stress, and Parkinson's awareness. Thank you for joining us on this episode. A reminder, you can find more information in my book, Me Time Monday, The Weekly Wellness Plan to Find Balance and Joy for a Busy Life, or visit MeTimeMonday.com or caregivingclub.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Caregiving Club on Air. Please hit the subscribe button. To listen to us on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, Pandora, as well as other listening channels. Check out all the resources and article links on our episode guide page at caregivingclub.com. Just hit the podcast tab at the top and email us with comments and questions at podcast@caregivingclub.com. Thank you again for listening and take care and stay well.